As Auckland's mayor ponders unpalatable ways to help fund for $1 billion blowout on the region's transport needs, a business group wants a radical speeding up of major projects. The Auckland Business Forum wants the entire 30-year program that's been agreed between the government and council built in the next decade. A new plan will accelerate light rail and additional trains for Auckland, but hasn't identified how $1 billion blowout over the next 3 years should be plugged. $1 billion. Our Auckland correspondent Todd Niall reports.
Auckland's rapid population growth has prompted the council and government to fast-track some major projects, doing much more in the next decade. Mayor Phil Goff is delighted.
It's a good news story, first of all. We're getting $3 billion more being spent on Auckland's infrastructure, and that means more projects coming forward. Now $1.2 billion set aside for what I believe will be light rail from the centre city through to Mount Roskill. That's excellent news.
Less excellent is the question of who's going to pay for the extra $1.9 billion cost over the next decade, with $1 billion of that needing to be found in the next 3 years. The government says it'll fund the lion's share from annual budgets and rising revenue from fuel taxes and road user charges. But the council's options are less clear. An umbrella group of business lobby groups, as well as Auckland's port company and airport, is undeterred and decided at a meeting today it wants the entire 30-year program done in 10 years. The chair of the Auckland Business Forum, Michael Barnett, says there's too much that needs to be done now, not in the distant future.
If we keep on doing it a little bit at a time, that's totally unrealistic. And I think, deciding what are the major projects, going international with them, and then compressing those time frames. At some point, Auckland has to catch up. We can't go for the next 30 years doing a catch-up.
Mr Barnett says international financiers could help, and the council needs to change its thinking on how to find the money and consider selling assets such as the port operating company while retaining the land. Auckland's Mayor Phil Goff doesn't want to raise rates beyond his election pledge or extend a 3-year transport levy due to lapse next year. But he told Morning Report that's all in the mix.
I'm dealing with a good faith negotiation with government. They want me to look at all of the options. I've undertaken to look at all of the options. I've also expressed to government which options I like and which ones I don't like.
Labour MP Phil Twyford leaked the updated Auckland Transport Alignment Project report and says his party's policy of allowing a 10 cent a litre regional fuel tax would be a partial solution.
That's an immediate way of generating about $160 million a year. That's about 25% of the funding gap. There are other ways, infrastructure bonds, using targeted rates to capture the big increases in property values around new infrastructure like the light rail network.
ACT leader, Epsom MP David Seymour, wants the government to share with local bodies the GST charged on infrastructure, saying the council has fewer other short-term options.
Selling an asset takes years. Raising rates, that's on a more than annual cycle. Changing the sharing of GST on infrastructure could happen within one central government budget cycle if the political will was there, and the ACT Party says we need a bit more political will.
The Auckland Council will need to lay out the possible options by the end of this year as it begins the process of setting not only next year's budget but updating its 10-year budget that covers the first decade of the transport investment. I tamaki makoro mo te hotaka o te ahiahi ko Todd Niall tēnei.